Okay, last class we started the topic of energy reaching the sensor, like what happens to the energy that reaches the surface. Very briefly, before that, very briefly, we saw how energy interacts with terrain. It can undergo either reflection or transmittance or absorption. Those things we saw. And reflection can be specular or diffuse. We saw like the conditions, the Rayleigh criterion for deciding whether a particular surface will produce specular reflection or diffuse reflection. As a next topic, we started what will happen to this reflected energy, because within wavelength less than 3 micrometers, all the energy that reaches a sensor is essentially the reflected energy from the Earth's surface, the reflected solar energy. We call that part as solar reflected portion of EMR, something like that we will say. So what happens to the reflected energy? That's what we started in the last class, and we are going to continue that today. So just to give a brief review of what we saw in the last class, the energy that gets reflected from a surface essentially can undergo like in 5 different paths. The first path is the direct path which is required by us, that is the direct reflected signal from the object of interest. Say if this is the object of interest, this is the direct signal going out from the object of interest. That's where we are interested upon. But that particular signal is contaminated by several other factors. One most important factor is the energy that is reflected or scattered by the atmosphere that will directly reach the sensor. So that we call as like path radiance. And third component is the scattered radiation will reach the surface and that will be reflected again. So that is like the diffuse energy. Like for any surface, energy component will have both direct and diffuse component. We already saw that. So this is like the diffuse component of incoming energy. And fourth path is the energy that reaches the sensor from an object that is neighbor to the object of our interest. Say this is the object of our interest, but this is the neighboring object. Energy from this also can reach the sensor because of sensor view geometry. That is again contamination of our wanted signal. And the least among all these things is the energy from this particular neighboring pixel may be reflected, falling on the object of our interest, and then going back to the sensor. So the object of our interest can not only receive energy from direct and diffuse sunlight components, but also from reflection from neighboring pixels. This can also happen. Say like one good example I told you in the last classes. Say if you are standing near a building, and if sun is shining on, you will receive sunlight, and also whatever light reflected from the building also will fall on you. Especially if the building is covered with glass or something, it will directly fall on you. You will receive a lot of radiation just from the building reflection itself. So this thing we call it as adjacency effect. Energy coming in from neighboring pixels, we call it as adjacency effects, which normally we don't want that thing to happen because it is kind of like a contaminant to our signal of interest. So these are different paths in which the signal can reach through. So essentially, the atmosphere and also the neighboring pixels plays a major role in altering the signal that reaches the sensor after it is getting reflected by the object of our interest. And also I told you that for most practical applications, we can neglect the energy from the neighboring pixels, that is path 4 and point 5. We can neglect, especially path 5 we can easily neglect because that will be like a very less amount of quantity because multiple reflections involved, so it will reduce a lot. Part 4 also we can consider it as like removed from our or neglect that particular issue because anyway within a pixel we are going to have like multiple objects. So essentially whatever we are going to see within a pixel is a combination of several objects, not one particular object, most likely. So we can say like, okay, what happens within a pixel? Like that we can treat the problem. So this also I introduced in the last class itself. So the primary 3 components we should consider is the energy reaching the sensor is equal to the energy that is directly reflected by the object of interest, the energy reaching the sensor as path radiance, that is the diffuse skylight directly reaching the sensor, oh sorry, this one is path radiance, and this one is the reflected energy, like whatever is the diffused radiation that will be reflected from the object of interest and going back. These three paths we have seen it. So what we are going to do in today's class is get some basic equations to know more about what all the different terms involved in these things. Like there are three different paths we came to know, but just to have like a more physical feeling for these things, I'm going to introduce you to some basic equations. These are not like difficult equations to remember, but as long as you understand the concept, that should be fine enough. So what essentially happens, first we will treat the direct radiation component. A direct radiation from the sun comes, it is reflecting and reaching the signal. That first part we will consider. So this, So this particular part we have already seen in radiometry class. This is the solar irradiance reaching the top of atmosphere. Like we calculated it for the entire solar spectrum. The value is 1368 watt per meter square. Solar constant, we saw that. If this is like, but in this normal remote sensing cases, we will be doing everything within defined spectral bandwidths, say 0.4 to 0.5, 0.52 to 0.62. We'll be doing everything in defined spectral bandwidth. So for our purposes, we should consider what is the incoming solar energy within that particular bandwidth. So essentially, you are kind of integrating the Planck's law within that bandwidth and adjusting it for the distance between the sun and earth. Once you do it, we will get to know the irradiance from the sun reaching the top of Earth's atmosphere within that particular given bandwidth. That is well known to us now. We can calculate it. Basic methods, we have already seen it, how to do it essentially if we want to do. Just to give a glimpse. So we have like Planck's law or Planck's equation, right? So integrate the Planck's equation within the wavelength of your interest or bandwidth of your interest. You will get, especially at sun's temperature, roughly 5800 Kelvin. If you do, you will get what the sun is emitting at that particular temperature. Adjust that for adjust that for the inverse square law. Inverse square law is E naught lambda emitted by sun multiplied by 4 pi sun's radius square divided by 4 pi distance between earth and sun square. So if you do this, very similar to our solar constant, we will get a value that will be the irradiance of the solar radiation reaching the top of Earth's atmosphere. Now, solar radiation has reached the top of atmosphere. It has to come down. It has to pass through the atmosphere. Again, we saw atmosphere is not very clear. Atmosphere also absorbs something, scatters something. So essentially, atmosphere is a lossy medium. So if 100 units of energy reaches the top of atmosphere, all the 100 will not reach the surface. Some energy will be lost within the atmosphere. So how much energy is actually, what fraction of energy is actually reaching the surface? We call that as transmissivity of the atmosphere, tau s lambda. So I just erase these parts. Yes. So transmissivity, tau s is tau s is nothing but the transmissivity.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, please.
In the first formula, should there be an 4 pi instead of just pi?
It is no. There basically they have considered it as like a one-dimensional problem. It is like they have treated a solar also rather than like taking 4 pi as a sphere, they have taken it as a one-dimensional problem and just considered as a circle, like solar disk and Earth. The distance also you can consider it as a disk.
Okay.
It's like two way of the actual formula should have 4 pi because like energy is going in all directions, so it should be 4 pi. But in that particular equation, rather than treating it as a sphere, they have treated it as a circle. So the area of circle will be pi r square. Distance also you can treat it as pi into d square.
But that will make the total answer 4 times the actual value.
Shouldn't be right. area of solar disk is pi r square. I said like you have to treat the solar disk also as pi r square.
Okay.
4 is taken out, cost
Okay,
common.
fine.
Yeah. Okay. So here it is like whether you're treating it as 2-dimensional or 3-dimensional. That's where the problem is. Actually, it's good to treat it as a 3-dimensional problem. Yeah. Okay. So coming back, if like 100 units of energy reaches the top of atmosphere, what fraction of it reaches the surface will give us what is known as transmissivity. And even for the clearest of atmosphere is totally clean without any dust or aerosol. Even if that is the case, transmissivity will not be 1. It is only for like microwave wavelengths, transmissivity is very close to 1. Rest of the cases, transmissivity will vary. Like that's what given in this particular bottom figure. Within the bandwidth we are considering now, 0.4 to less than 3 micrometers, you can see the maximum transmissivity is somewhere around like 0.85, and that is also for the clearest of atmospheres. That too nadir looking, all these things will influence. So essentially, the energy, solar energy reaching the sensor is what reaches the top of atmosphere multiplied by the transmissivity of the atmosphere at that particular time, like at that particular time in which we are interested. And also one more thing to remember is the transmissivity will vary with wavelength. That is, as you can see clearly from the below graph itself, transmissivity will definitely vary with wavelength. And second thing, it will also vary with viewing angle, or sorry, the angle in which solar energy is coming. Like we have already seen, as the path length of EMR increases, the absorption and scattering will basically increase. So if sunlight is just slightly overhead of us, the path taken by sun will be much smaller. If the sun is near the horizon, the path of EMR travel will be much longer. So longer the path travel, lower will be the transmissivity because of higher absorption and higher scattering. So essentially, whatever is reaching the top of atmosphere, multiply that with transmissivity, you will get solar radiation reaching the Earth's atmosphere. So I'm just writing it here for your note. It changes with not viewing angle, solar elevation angle. I'll write. At what angle the sunlight is coming. Okay. This is already we have seen like what fraction of solar energy reaches the Earth's surface. Also we know only a very tiny fraction of solar energy what sun is emitting will reach the Earth's surface because sun is subtending a much smaller solid angle, first thing. And second thing, various atmospheric absorption elements and scattering elements greatly modifies the original solar spectrum. This we have already seen. Okay, now sun's radiation has reached the Earth's surface, like this particular term, or here. Yeah. But what will happen if the surface is totally flat? No issues. If sun is like falling on like this, like normal to the surface, absolutely fine, no problem. But most of the cases, sunlight will be falling in one particular angle, and it will not be like normal to the surface, especially like mountainous terrain and all. Here sunlight will be falling like this. Here sunlight will be falling at a different angle because of the slope of the mountain. So everything will change. In order to account for this change in incoming energy because of sun's angle and also the topographic angle, we multiply this particular thing with a cos of angle from the normal. So theta is the angle from normal. Say if this is like the normal, so theta is angle from the normals to the surface. So we multiply with the cos theta in order to account for this particular viewing angle effect and also to account for topographic effect, because topography will play a major role in deciding what fraction of solar energy reaches the surface. If it's like a steep slope, because of the slope, it may even completely hinder the solar energy reaching it. Anything can happen. So this is like at that particular point on the Earth's surface, what is the theta? Calculate the theta, multiply, take a cos theta of it, multiply with this. So this is the total energy essentially that will be available to the object of our interest. So this is the total energy available to us. Now comes, okay, now what we have calculated? We have calculated the total energy that is available to us. Okay, so this is the one which I have written in the red box is total energy. Now we are interested in the reflected component basically because this energy is available. What fraction of is it reflected? And we also know what is known as a reflectance term here. Like reflectance is defined as irradiance reflected or the reflected radiant flux density divided by radiant flux density received as the object of interest. So this is what reflectance is, and multiply the energy that is coming in with reflectance, you will get the total energy going out within the hemisphere, because the reflectance here we have defined it for the hemispherical reflectance. What we have used here is nothing but the hemispherical reflectance. That is, what is the energy reflected within the entire hemisphere surrounding the object of interest. But we all know that this thing is directional. So instead of irradiance, we need to use radiance term L, and for Lambertian surfaces, E is equal to L pi. So essentially the radiance reaching the sensor is irradiance received from the sun multiplied by hemispherical reflectance divided by this pi. So L is equal to E by pi. So this term will give you the total irradiance received by the object of our interest. Multiply that with reflectance and divided by pi will give you the radiance that is actually reflected by the object of interest. This is everything is that is given here. So, but the only assumption we are doing is the surface is Lambertian. That is, this particular equation holds good. Then only we can say like L is equal to E by pi. That's why we are doing it. Okay. So any doubt till now? What we have seen is we have just calculated what is the incoming solar energy and what fraction of incoming solar energy goes back. So incoming solar energy is some amount multiplied by hemispherical reflectance divided by pi, assuming that the surface is Lambertian. Okay. Now the energy is like it has reached the sensor surface, it has been reflected back. Now again the energy has to travel through the atmosphere once more before reaching the sensor. So one more term of transmissivity of atmosphere comes into picture, because another way of the entire travel is there, and this transmissivity will be maybe totally different from the first transmissivity we used. Here is transmissivity for the solar radiation. Here is transmissivity for the reflected radiation. These two can be totally different. Any reasons for that? Any guess why these two transmissivities can be totally different?
Path traveled is not the same.
Exactly. The path traveled by the incoming sun's energy will may be totally different from the path traveled by this energy to reach the sensor. Sensor may be near the nadir, sun may be near the horizon, or vice versa, whatever be the case. Essentially, because of the path difference, these two transmissivities may not be the same, and we have to consider them separately. So the total energy reaching the sensor after getting reflected by the object of our interest is given by this particular equation. That is, this term will give you what is the solar energy reaching the surface. I'll change colors. Yeah. This term will give you what is the reflection nature of the surface. Oh, sorry, not this thing. Pi and this thing will give you the what is the reflection nature of the surface, and this term will give you how clear the atmosphere is on the path between Earth and the sensor. So three different components. One is the incoming solar energy, second thing is the reflection nature of the surface, and third thing is the atmospheric conditions between Earth's surface and the sensor. So this is just the direct component. We have not come to the other components. This is just the direct component. Now other component, fairly we need not look at them in a much detailed way because most of our interest lies in this direct component. Other component we can like simplify it just to give you like a what to say simplified manner. I have written this. So the diffuse skylight component is whatever is scattered by the sunlight or whatever is scattered by the atmosphere. So essentially whatever is reaching the Earth's surface from the sun, it will be there like sorry, yeah, like E lambda D is like what fraction of, if you calculate the direct solar radiation, and if you know what fraction will go as diffuse radiation, you can calculate it. But normally we use models to calculate this, but just to give you a glimpse, I'm writing it here. Okay. So this is like the diffuse component of solar radiation. That is multiplied by what to say, reflectance of surface by pi will give you the reflectance, and this is again the path radiance in the view angle. Only thing is, instead of using a direct radiation, you have to use a diffuse radiation here, just to account for what fraction of energy is coming in as diffuse. We need to know if the energy, total energy received is say 100 units, say like 80% may be direct and 20% may be diffuse. So in the first part, you have to use this 80%, what is coming as direct. Whereas in the second part, we have to use this 20%. That's the major difference. Maybe you can just leave this F part, not necessarily needed now. One thing you have to remember is the surface reflected diffuse skylight component will be a fraction of the direct component, if at all if the sky is really clear. On the other hand, if the sky is totally overcast, there is no direct radiation, everything is diffuse, this component will increase drastically, this component will come down drastically at the same point. But as I said, it is very difficult to know what fraction is direct and what fraction is diffuse. Either we should have ground-based observations, or we should rely on some sort of atmospheric models to predict or to simulate what will be the cloudiness over the area and what will be the direct and diffuse component. We have to assume either the model is correct or we need to have some sort of ground observations. But everything else, the other step of calculation is more or less same. But instead of this direct sunlight, you have to just put in the diffuse skylight component. That's it. And third thing is path radiance. Path radiance also we won't be able to estimate it with our hand. So for the sake of our discussion, just mark it down as radiance, path radiance. That's it. So again, we have to use models for estimating this. So the reason why I told you is the total radiance reaching the sensor from the object of our interest has three different components. One is the direct component, one is the reflected diffuse skylight component, and one thing is path radiance. Here what you have to observe, what I want you to observe is atmosphere plays two different roles. First role is through this transmissivity. So transmissivities are nothing but a multiplicative factor, because transmissivity are using as a multiplicative factor. So a multiplying effect, but essentially the factor is less than 1, and hence it will reduce the energy available, either whether it is coming down towards the surface or going towards the sensor. A multiplicative factor less than 1, which will reduce the energy available. Second way, as an additive component, like path radiance is an additive component, which will increase the energy available, but it will increase the energy in a wrong way. Energy will increase, the total energy reaching the sensor will increase because path radiance is an additive component, but it will add unwanted signal. We don't want that. It is kind of like a contaminant, as I said before. So it is kind of like a pollutant, and it's an additive component. So atmosphere plays two different roles, and a multiplying role, which reduces the total energy available through these transmissivities, and in an additive role, which increases the energy available, but in an unwanted way, which normally we don't like. Okay, so is it clear till now or any questions till now? Please feel free to ask. No doubts? Okay, I assume you don't have any doubts, but if anything comes, please stop me and ask then and there. Okay. Now we finished what reaches a sensor in the shorter wavelength, say less than 3 micrometers. Everything is reflected. Now we come to the longer wavelength. Longer wavelength means first we will talk about greater than 8 micrometers. That is long wave infrared region. I already said when the wavelength threshold crosses beyond 8 micrometers, incoming solar radiation is almost zero. We can safely neglect it. So whatever the energy that reaches the sensor is essentially due to the energy emitted by Earth. So solar radiation has no role to play in that particular wavelength except for heating the Earth's surface. Solar energy provides energy to heat up the Earth's surface, increase its temperature. So Earth will emit more in that particular longer wavelength. That's it. Okay. So essentially, if the wavelength of observation crosses 8 micrometers, what we are observing is free from solar radiation term, and it has only Earth emitted components. Here also we have 3 different path very similar to that. So the total radiance reaching the sensor composed of a direct emitted component, a surface reflected path emitted component, and the direct path emitted component. That is, Earth surface is here, atmosphere is here. Atmosphere also has its own temperature energy level, so it will also be emitting some energy in the long wave infrared portion. Whatever atmosphere is emitting directly will go and add here. That's the very similar to path radiance there. Here also it is path emittance we can call. Second thing, atmosphere will not only emit towards the sensor, will also emit towards the surface. So surface will receive additional energy, but this energy is essentially in the LWIR wavelength. So please remember the difference. In the first part, what we have discussed, whatever the energy that came in. Yes. So whatever the energy that came here, essentially like less than 3 micrometers directly from the sun. And this is also scattered radiation less than 3 micrometers. In this case, nothing is scattered because solar radiation incoming in this particular wavelength is zero. So nothing will be scattered. Whatever is emitted by the atmosphere, naturally it will be in wavelength of greater than 8 micrometers. We already seen this using Wien's displacement law. At average temperature of Earth's surface, the peak emission will be around like 9 micrometers, 10 micrometers, and so on. So essentially, lambda greater than 8 micrometers. So whatever the atmosphere is emitting, it will come down, and surface will get some additional energy within that, and it will be reflected back. So this reflection is essentially in the LWIR band. So please remember, reflectance will vary with bandwidth, and the reflectance I am using here corresponds to LWIR bands. There the reflectance we have used, whatever reflectance we have used here, whatever reflectance we have used here is essentially for the visible NIR and SWIR bandwidth. This reflection is different, like the values will be different. Concept wise same, but values will be totally different. Here the reflectance I am using is reflectance in LWIR band. Each object will have its own reflectance also, even in LWIR band. It will be very small for most of the Earth surface features, but still it will be there. So remember to use a different reflectance. Don't use the same reflectance. Reflectance varies a lot with bandwidth. Please remember that in mind. Okay. So whatever will be coming in from the atmosphere will be reflected back, going towards the sensor. And the major direct component that we are interested upon is direct surface emitted. Okay. This also we have seen that sun's energy almost becomes zero after 8 micrometers. Yes, maybe I will come to this later. Okay. Now we will see. Now what we are going to see is just get to know what are the various terms involved in these three components, like very similar to the direct component and solar reflected portion. Here also we will just dig a little deeper to understand what are all the different components in this direct emitted component. Okay. So that whatever we have treated, everything is with respect to sun as the base. Solar, the major energy is sun. Here, Earth's surface itself is the energy source. And what we have to use is, we have to use the Planck's law for Earth's temperature. Say if you assume the Earth's temperature is 300 Kelvin, apply Planck's law for the wavelength of your interest. Say I am observing between 10 to 12 micrometers. So if you assume Earth is a 300 Kelvin, so substitute 300 Kelvin in Planck's law, integrate it between say 10 to 12 micrometers, you will get the whatever is the total energy that will be emitted by Planck's law. So this is very simple to what we do for sun, very similar to what we do for sun. We are doing it for Earth's surface by changing the temperature, by changing the wavelength in which you are observing. Very simple. But here comes one tricky thing. Not a tricky thing, but one thing we have to remember. Till now, I have said whatever be the temperature, just substitute in Planck's law, just substitute in Planck's law. But Planck's law essentially holds good for what is known as a black body. What a black body is? A black body is one which will perfectly obey Planck's law. In a sense, Planck's law will give you the maximum amount of energy that can be emitted. Like what Planck's law gives is the maximum limit. Beyond that, an object cannot emit energy. That is the maximum limit. So that is, we call it as a thermodynamic limit, because that's what is practically available or practically emittable by the object as according to thermodynamic principles. So I will say that as thermodynamic limit. So that will be obeyed only by black bodies. Black bodies are those objects which will emit radiation at its maximum efficiency as defined by Planck's law. So whatever is defined by Planck's law is the maximum limit, and object will emit obeying the Planck's law. Someone's mic is on, I guess. So can you please mute it? Thank you. On the other hand, Earth surface features, most of the Earth surface features will not emit at maximum efficiency, and they will not obey Planck's law. Like they will not obey in the sense they cannot emit at the maximum efficiency as described by Planck's law. They will emit only at a certain fraction of it. Say if Planck's law tells that an object will emit 100 units of energy, it may not, a real world object may not emit 100 units, it may emit only 95 units. So remaining 5% it cannot emit. That's the limitation it has as prescribed by thermodynamics and its own object structure. So that difference, what is the actual energy emitted by the object divided by what is the actual energy emitted according to Planck's law, that ratio will give you the emissivity. Okay. So emissivity is nothing but the ratio between the radiant flux density emitted by the object at a given temperature T divided by the radiant flux density emitted by a black body at the same temperature T. So here a black body will obey Planck's law. Normal real world object will not be in a position to obey Planck's law. It will have a reduced efficiency of emission. So there comes a value of emissivity. So this term emissivity is really important. We will again see it later when we discuss thermal infrared remote sensing. In the second half of the course, I will introduce or talk in detail about it. Okay. So right now, emissivity is just the ratio of emission from real world object to the Planck's law. So what we have to do, we know only Planck's law. So if you cross multiply this, emissivity into Planck's law will give you actual energy emitted by an object. So that is what they're written in the numerator part. So numerator gives you what will be emitted by an object at a given temperature T in the corresponding wavelength. That's it. So emissivity is just we are introducing in order to account for this inefficiency of object in emittance. That's it. And here also we are dividing it by pi because again emissivity is defined for the entire hemisphere, hemispherical emittance. Assuming the object is again like a Lambertian emitter, we are dividing it by pi because E is equal to L pi. The same rule we are applying. Whatever is there in the numerator is nothing but emitted radiant flux density E. In order to convert that to radians, we are dividing it by pi. Very simple. Okay. Now this is the emitted energy component. It has to reach the sensor. So again, an atmospheric transmissivity comes into picture. So atmospheric transmissivity, when it comes into picture, just multiply this and final equation, you will get it like this. So this is the total radiance emitted by an object that reaches the sensor. Here the transmissivity you have to calculate for LWIR band and based on the viewing angle of the sensor. Okay. So this is related to direct emission component. Any questions on this? Okay, fine. So just for your information, for most of the Earth surface features, when transmittance is 0, reflectance is equal to 1 minus emittance. This is known as Kirchhoff's law. That is, the last lecture we saw that the total incoming energy can be reflected, can be absorbed, or can be transmitted, right? So say for example, you're taking a land surface. Land surface will not transmit energy. So transmittance will be essentially 0. So incoming energy should be either reflected or absorbed. And what Kirchhoff law says is, good absorbers or good emitters, they will be more or less equal. If an object absorbs 10% of energy, it will also emit 10% of energy. That's what Kirchhoff's law says. Using that, if you substitute reflectance in LWIR band, okay, I'll write it here. Reflectance in LWIR band will be equal to 1 minus emissivity in LWIR band. This is true for any band. We have to use the corresponding values. That's it. That's why I wrote here LWIR specifically for long wave infrared portion. But whatever be the band, whether it is visible, SWR, whatever, this law will hold good actually. Okay. So this is just for information. Again, in the later part of course, in thermal infrared remote sensing, I'll talk about this in a detailed way. But remember this, reflectance is equal to 1 minus emittance. Please have it in mind. Yeah, this is just to give you the atmospheric transmittance. Here again, you can see like atmosphere is pretty clear between these wavelengths and this wavelength. But again, the transmittance is quite low, less than say 0.7. So whatever the Earth surface is emitting may not reach the sensor completely, but it will have only a fraction of it reaching. Again, here we are coming to the second component, that is the reflected downward component. So this is energy emitted by the atmosphere, emissivity of atmosphere multiplied by m temperature of atmosphere. If you do this, you will get this. This is to account for the reflection from the surface. Here also the reflection you are using is LWIR bands reflection. This is the transmittance. Again, you please drop this F. No need to remember that. So essentially, very similar to the first component, we instead of using Earth's reflected component, Earth's emitted component, I am using a atmosphere emitted component. That's all. And here I am accounting for Earth surface reflectance also for path 2. Again, path 3, path radiance. I am just using it as radiance, path radiance, emitted radiance without elaborating on that. In thermal infrared remote sensing, I'll teach you in detail how to do that, like a little bit more detail. So here also the total energy reaching the sensor is this, the total radiance reaching the sensor. And it has again, atmosphere plays the similar 2 roles. First thing is a multiplicative factor through use of transmittance, and an additive factor through the use of path emittance, which is an unwanted signal. So the only difference between this and the solar reflected part is, in solar reflected part, major source of energy is sun, and you will be talking about reflectance of Earth's surface. In this case, the major source of energy is Earth itself, and we are talking about the emissivity of the Earth's surface. That is more important here. And emissivity is equal to, sorry, reflectance is equal to 1 minus emissivity by Kirchhoff's law. This also we know. And yes, so this is whatever we have seen till now is just taken care of very basic equations to tell what are the different components involved. Earth's reflection, Earth's emittance, solar transmittance and all. So finally, the radiance reaching the sensor will be influenced by three factors: atmosphere, variation in solar radiance, like variation in solar view angle, azimuth angle, and seasons. With respect to season, the incoming energy will change. That also plays a major role. And topographic effects, whether the surface is horizontal, whether the surface is like this, a mountain, it all plays a role. If it is a mountain, if sun is here, this portion will receive lot of energy, whereas this portion will not receive energy, it will be in shadow. So that will affect how the reflection occurs. So essentially, whatever the energy reflected or emitted by the Earth's surface, before it goes to the sensor, it will be affected by atmosphere, incoming solar radiation itself, and the topographic effects. So this particular figure in this slide is just to give an example of how the signal that reaches the sensor will change. Okay, so this is from a green grass, an example for green grass modeled at certain atmosphere and solar radiation conditions. What is given there as a dotted line here is the true spectral reflectance curve from the grass. Okay, so this will look, it should look like this. Yeah, so whatever is given in the dotted line. So if this curve is like this, we can easily say, okay, it is a vegetation, and somehow we can say it is like a grass by using different clues. On the other hand, what will reach the sensor will be totally different. So what will reach the sensor is essentially this line. So this is like just one modeled component, may not be true for all cases, but just as an example I am telling. So what you should observe is what reaches the sensor is entirely different from what is actually expected. So what it means, we cannot directly use remote sensing images. We have to correct it for the effect of atmosphere, solar radiation and topographic effect before we can have some meaningful interpretation out of it. So that is the major take-home message from this particular lecture. Atmosphere, sun's radiation variation and topography all plays a role. All of them changes the radiance reaching the sensor, and before we use the remote sensing imagery for anything, we should correct them for these effects, at least for atmospheric effect. Even if our surface is really flat, I'm working on a plane region, that's okay, but still I have to correct it for the effect of atmosphere. That is the major take-home message from this particular lecture. So here in the coming lectures, I will show you few examples to drive home the point of what will happen for different objects. First thing is same area imaged by the same sensor at the same time, almost same time, I'll say within like 10-15 minutes, but at different view angles. This is by a sensor called MISR, like multiple view angle infrared spectroradiometer. So here what happens is, this is sensor is looking 70.5 degree forward. Like if the sensor is here, this is, it will look like this, 70.5 degree away from normal in the forward direction. This is the nadir, like exactly at the nadir point, and this is 70.5 degree in the backward direction. So these three images are taken in the respective three angles. One is forward looking, one is nadir looking, one is backward looking or aft looking, whatever. If you see, same area looks completely different because of this change in viewing angle. Atmospheric transmittance varies a lot. So here transmittance is quite low. Here transmittivity will be like more or less or quite relatively larger. Here again it is smaller value of transmissivity because of change in atmospheric path distance. And also, if you see here, the Earth's surface is looking like bright green and all. Here it is looking different. Here it is looking different. So essentially, the change in view angle is going to change the effect of atmosphere and also the how surface is going to look. That's what we read it as BRDF, bidirectional reflectance distribution function. As the viewing angle changes, an object is going to look completely different. So this is an example for that. Just to drive home the point, change in view angle is going to change both the effect of atmosphere and also the surface reflectance. So this is another example of from the same sensor MASR, but this is like under clear atmospheric conditions. So this bigger image is for a nadir looking image, and all the smaller images are essentially different angles. So this is forward looking 70 degrees, forward looking 45 degrees, backward looking 45 degrees, backward looking 70 degrees. That is essentially different view angles in the forward and backward directions. This is nadir looking, exactly looking from the top. Just see how the Earth's surface looks totally different in all these 5 images. Major differences, here you can see a lot of difference in the water body, how water is reflecting. Here you can see like here the color pattern is different. Here the color, this is a FCC image, not like a single band, it's an FCC image. Here it is looking different, here it is looking greenish, here it is looking little bit of pinkish because of the reflectance property of the surface changes with viewing angle. This is another example of how to consider how it is an example for why we should consider this viewing angle effect. Whenever you calculate surface reflectance, for sake of simplicity, we will assume the surface is Lambertian. Like in the first equation, I just said use E is equal to L pi. Assume the surface as Lambertian. That is the most simplified case. In reality, most of the surfaces are not Lambertian, and unless we correct for this viewing angle effect or BRDF effect, our actual surface reflectance is going to vary. That's the major message I wanted to convey to you. And this is example for topographic and sun angle effect. That is, these two images taken same area with same viewing angle, because like at different times but same viewing angle, but still here sun is near the nadir. So sun is almost nadir looking. In this image, sun is almost near the horizon. You can see how much shadow is cast. Here there is total shadow. Here shadow is not there. Here we cannot see the ridge. Here like very minor values of small values are seen. Here you are seeing like a broader patches of shadow. So whatever reflectance you calculate from this is going to vary for this image and this image. This is mainly because of effect of change in solar radiation and effect of topography. If the surface is flat, then this effect may not be seen, but this is a mountainous area, Grand Canyon in USA. So it's like a peak and valley. It's an area filled with peak and valleys. That is going to change the way the object looks because of variation in incoming solar radiation. And this is an example for thermal infrared image, like what Earth surface is emitting. Okay, so this is like the band 4 image. Band 4 is like NIR, I guess, if I remember it correctly. And this is the TAR image, thermal infrared image. Here you can see clouds appear like pretty bright because of high reflectance. These are all cloud shadows because of stoppage of light. Here, if you look, you can see clouds appearing pretty dark. This is the temperature of Earth's surface. So whatever there is like a bright patch, here there is high temperature, here there is slightly lower temperature, here it's high, here it's low. And clouds appear darker in temperature image. So any guess why clouds appear darker in thermal infrared images? Please think and tell, whatever be the answer, whatever you think, it's fine. So brighter means high temperature, darker means lower temperature. That is the normal way thermal infrared image is acquired. Why do clouds appear darker in TR images?
So because clouds are condensed in the atmosphere, so they are relatively at lower temperature than the land.
Yes, so clouds are relatively at a lower temperature. Basically, they're at a lower temperature because of its very high elevation, basically. Okay, as the water vapor goes higher and higher in atmosphere, its temperature comes down. It will be kind of lowering its temperature, so it appears darker. That is one reason. My next question is, let us assume somehow I'm creating cloud near the Earth's surface. Okay, somehow I'm able to do some condensation and create it. So temperature variation is not much because it's closer to Earth's surface. Still, cloud will appear darker. Why is it so? Just think over what you have discussed in today's class. That's a clue.
So the transmissivity.
Not transmissivity, but other property. Reflectance. Cloud has a very high reflectance. So rho is equal to 1 minus emissivity. Because of lower temperature, cloud will have lower temperature. That is no doubt on that. But also because of this, reflectance is very high. So 1 minus reflectance will be very low. And clouds has very low emissivity. That's what it cannot emit actually. Even if it has some energy, it cannot emit and it will appear colder in thermal infrared images. So essentially, like the thermal infrared images is a combination of surface emissivity property and also surface temperature. Temperature wise, it is cooler, fine. Even if I raise the temperature, still it will have a lower temperature or it will appear darker in thermal infrared images because of lower emissivity value. That's the major clue. Okay. This thing is again a thermal infrared images acquired over a mountainous region. So this is again same thing. Brighter patches are areas with higher temperature. Darker patches are areas with lower temperature. But this is, we call it as shadows basically. This is thermal shadows. Very similar. Similar to we see shadows in our normal visible images, in thermal images also we can see shadows. And why do you think shadows form in TR images? What can be the reason we see shadows? Like if you look at the previous image, even though there is a cloud here, in the visible images, we are very clearly seeing shadows here, like here in this particular points. In thermal images, shadows are not that prominent. It is slightly reduced, but still some shadow is there. Why shadow is forming in TR images? What causes it? Anyways, Earth is emitting. Whether Earth is like what to say, wherever Earth surface is, it will emit. So we should see them. If the surface is uniform, we should see them uniformly bright, right? But still, we will be able to see shadows in TR images. Are these shadows same, or that is the shadow in TR image and visible images are same or different, or any guess on that? Just take a rough guess. It should be fine.
Maybe due to the Earth's own temperature.
Yes, Earth's own temperature is there. So the particular portion should be emitting, right? It is emitting, but still it appears darker than its surroundings. This image is taken during daytime. That also you keep it in mind.
Direction of emission.
So different features will have different emissivities, maybe.
Okay, that is true. But here the surface is homogeneous, we can assume. Everything is like same type of rock. Mainly because differential heating of the surface. During daytime, sunlight will give you a lot of energy to the Earth's surface. So this is like a highly varying topography, and sunlight is coming in from this particular direction in the image. Okay, so that I have not given here. So from the lower right, sunlight is coming. So what essentially happens is, because of topographic effect, one side of topography is brightly lit by sun, its temperature is increased rapidly. other portion which is there, in, like, say for example, if the hill is like this portion temperature will be much higher than this particular portion, because sunlight is not directly falling on it. It is not heating up as rapidly as this. So emission here is actually enhanced because of Earth's own emission and also increased temperature due to sun's energy. On this side, sun's energy is not there, only Earth's emission is there. So that is normally the reason we see thermal shadows. In thermal shadows, in thermal infrared images, shadows occur because some amount of heating energy is being cut off from the surface. Even if you look at this previous image, this cloud will obscure whatever is the solar energy coming in, and that is why the land surface below it has a slightly lower temperature than this portion. Okay, so here, and also like here you can see like a small thermal shadow. This is a thermal shadow because the cloud here obstructs the energy, and the amount of heating at this particular point on Earth's surface will be less than what is heating on its neighboring pixel. So in reflected image, shadow forms because light doesn't come, light is obscured. Same thing happens here. Because of obscure or because of stoppage of incoming energy, the rate of change of temperature within a given area will be changed or will be changing. So one area will be heating up at a faster rate, one area we will be heating at a smaller rate. So the area which is not receiving much energy will appear darker in TIR image. So that portion we call it as TIR shadows or thermal shadows basically. And this is example of how an urban area will look. Normally this is like an urban area. I think this is Louisiana state in USA. So how a city will look. City normally will have lot of concrete materials, paved roads, not much of vegetation, etc. So they will have normally higher temperature than surrounding rural areas. So this we call urban heat island effect. That is, urban areas will appear much brighter than in surrounding rural areas with a higher temperature. So again, just to give an example, anyway, we will see all these things later in thermal infrared classes after the mid-sim part. Okay. So I think this will bring us to the end of this particular lecture. So we will close the class now. From Monday, we will start a fresh topic. So till then, any doubts for you guys in today's class? Today's class, essentially what we have seen is whether it is reflected part or emitted part, it has three components. One is a direct component, one is surface reflected, atmosphere emitted component, and third one is direct atmospheric reflected component or atmospheric emitted component, whatever. Three components in there. Atmosphere plays a big role in two different ways. One is through transmissivity, it reduces the amount of energy, whereas through path emittance, it increases the amount of unwanted energy, I will say. It's an unwanted energy, okay? So that's what we have seen in class. What are the different components of energy that reaches the sensor? And also, what I want you to understand today is, we cannot directly use a remote sensing image. We have to correct it for the effect of atmosphere, topography, and solar factors. If our study area is relatively flat, at least we should correct it for atmospheric effect. And same object may look totally different under different viewing angles. Few examples I have shown you. And in today's class, I have defined what is emissivity of an object. So basically, emissivity is the ratio of actual energy emitted by an object to the energy emitted by a black body at the same temperature T. Okay. So I think, yeah, this should be fine for today's class. Any questions? Nothing?
Sir, in case of in those curves, the surface reflectance curve, the energy received, the reflectance received by the sensor, the curve for the energy received by the sensor must lie entirely below the surface reflectance curve. Yes, sir. In the region between 0.4 to 0.8 micrometer, how is that
Okay.
curve above?
How is the sensor reaching curve is above the normal surface? That's what you're asking, right?
Yes.
Why green line is above the red line? That's your question.
Yes.
Okay, that is because of path radiance. That is whatever the surface is reflecting, surface reflectance, that is phi. but I said path radiance is additive component. It will add energy to it. So path radiance is nothing but scattered energy, and we know that scattering will happen, larger amount of scattering will happen at lower wavelengths. So if you look at this 0.4 to 0.8 micrometers, where naturally scattering will be more amount of path radiance will be there, and that is why the sensor reaching energy is much higher than longer wavelength. That is because of path radiance.
Okay,
Is it clear?
yes.
Okay, fine. Any other questions?
Sir, I have a question. Sir,
Yes, please.
can't we counter the atmospheric effects by using microwaves, because they will be least scattered, because non-selective scattering will not take place in case of microwaves. So can we counter all the atmospheric effects with using microwaves?
It is true. Atmosphere is fairly transparent to microwave. That is why microwave is used even during like cloudy days. That is true. But the thing is, in microwaves, the object's property that we are going to establish is totally different from what we are seeing in visible or thermal infrared band. Each band has its own purpose. Microwave will give you like a different perspective on object, especially like microwave will tell you more about electrical properties of an object. Whatever affects the electrical property of an object will be clearly seen in microwave. Microwave will not show you all the information contained within visible images. And also thermal infrared will show you a different perspective. So each portion, whatever you take, visible, NIR, SWIR, thermal infrared or microwave, are complementary to each other. That is, they are not complementary, they are supplementary. Each one adds own information. So you cannot only use microwave to get all the information you need. Maybe when we later discuss microwave also, you will be understanding it. But just for this particular class, what you want to know is, microwave we can definitely use during cloudy days, atmosphere if it is low. But the thing is, the information contained within microwave images is different from the information contained within visible image or thermal image. Each particular information is different from each other, and we need everything to know more about the Earth's surface. That's the idea.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much.
Yeah, welcome. Any other questions? Okay, fine. So if there are no questions, maybe we will finish today's class. On Monday, we will start with a new topic. And I think before that, your assignment deadline will be there. Please work on it. Any doubts, please email me so that it can be rectified. Okay. So take care then until see you next week.